We're nestled between the Selkirk Mountains and Kootenay Lake here. Nelson's in the southeast corner of British Columbia. We're a population just over 11,000, but the regional population just surrounding Nelson probably doubles that. I'm Kevin Cormack. I'm the city manager here in the city of Nelson and have been in that role for over 20 years now. We have four overarching goals as the city as the whole, council's priorities, and active transportation falls into our strengthening our neighborhoods, and that means creating well-connected neighborhoods, and transportation is a really important part of that. Create that as part of your culture. You need to be an active community, so I would always start there, making sure that your community likes to get out, likes to be out on their own and being active, whether that's cycling, walking, playing sports, or Tai Chi. The second thing I would say is have good planning. You need good urban planning and really working with your council that they understand what that planning is. It is long-term and you need to make sure you're making steps towards that. Being ready, making sure that you have your plans in place. We all rely on senior levels of government grants. And if you have your active transportation plan developed, you're much more likely to get those grants. And getting your community involved, getting them involved in those projects. One of our key challenges is the cost of new infrastructure. Both the upfront costs and the maintenance over time are challenges. Nelson proper, our topography is a bit challenging. Electric bikes have been a game changer for us.
My name is Sebastian Arakan. I'm a senior planner with the city of Nelson, and I guess I've been tasked to really kind of take the dust off of our old active transportation plan and kind of create a implementation strategy for the next 5 years. What are we going to do? And I think one of the priorities was try to increase infrastructure for safe cycling. Depending on which direction you're coming from, so this is either the starting point or the end point of what is the first phase of our bike route corridor. So this is essentially the start of the High Street portion of the bike corridor. It's nice to segregate cyclists and vehicles from each other when you can, but it's going to be very unlikely in Nelson that we're going to be able to build a lot of these segregated facilities. So this kind of trains or makes everyone aware of how you share roads. So essentially there's four main components to this project. There's increased signage to explain to people that they are on a bike route, how to act. There's also reduced traffic speed. So the speed along this corridor is going to be 30 kilometers an hour. Also, there is a strategy to reduce traffic volumes. We're hoping to reduce volumes to 1,000 vehicles per day, and that is done through additional speed humps and through an intersection closure that we'll visit a bit later. And the final component is we're going to do some pavement markings really to show that this is a bike route. So a lot of sharrows will be installed along this corridor. Like anything, it takes a bit of time for people to change their habits. So this is a very tricky intersection. So we've got the highway just coming around, and most traffic will kind of do that left-hand turn. And then what happened is that you mix the school drop-off and school pickup at the same time with that, and it created some really awkward movements in this area. And then the second part was to block off this intersection to help to reduce the traffic volume. So we looked at this as being an alternate route which runs parallel to the highway, pretty easy to get on, residential, lots of trees, pretty narrow, which is actually good for a shared street, and low volume. So these, a lot of municipalities are now moving towards that model of removing people from removing these heavy infrastructure along busy corridors and trying to find alternative routes that are nearby those corridors. Another thing we decided to do here is these curb extensions. And essentially they serve a few different functions. They do create a choke point at the intersection, which visually, when the roads are narrower, will tend to slow vehicles down. And at the same time, it will make sure that vehicles don't park right at the intersection, creating visibility issues. And the other benefit is for pedestrians. It actually shortens their crossing section, and they are more visible because before they cross, they're essentially already on, like they're in line with the driver's sight. They're not hidden behind grass boulevard or trees or things like that. It's important for people to consider that, you know, active transportation infrastructure or cycling infrastructure doesn't necessarily equate to a bike lane per se. And often we look at Victoria or Vancouver have bike lanes, but they have traffic volumes, traffic speeds that warrant a bike lane. I think in a lot of smaller communities, you can use your residential street, just try and have a better understanding of your traffic counts and how the geometry of the road works. And sometimes it could be as simple as some paint markings, some intersection treatment, and just reducing the speed limits along those corridors. So, you know, simple things can work without having to go and do the big infrastructure change. I think, you know, you got to see that it's nothing's going to be perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think that's how you learn.
My name's Anna Lamyorski, and I'm the president of the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition. It's a nonprofit that's been around just for 2 years, and our goal is to make active transportation prioritized in Nelson and the surrounding region. One of the members said, "Did you know that Nelson had this active transportation plan? That Nelson has this plan? And that if you have a plan, you can apply for funding to this now called Active Transportation Grant Program." We gave a presentation to council saying all the great things about active transportation, and then at the end we said, "Did you know about this grant? You already have a plan. That means you're eligible. They will fund up to 75% of your projects." And very quickly they put in a successful submission to get the plan going. I have spoken with other representatives, individuals often in other communities that say, like, how can we start something similar? And so the advice I would give them would be to get in touch with the BC Cycling Coalition, to find out if your community has an active transportation plan, and if they don't, urge them to get one, let them know about the grant. And then we created a Facebook group, and it's been really quite effective as a line of communication.
My name is Keith Page, and I'm a city councillor with the City of Nelson. And when this council came through, there was an opportunity when it came to parking revenue and a new system of collecting overdue fees. And one of our councillors really had the insight to grab a hold of a piece of that recovered revenue and say, this should be specifically for active transportation. Parking revenue has always been going towards maintenance of the street structure and dealing with making sure our streets are comfortable and accommodating to cars. But it was taking that money and saying, this is the seed for something more. The advice I would give to small communities about active transportation is follow the money. Look where you're spending money on asphalt and pavement and see what portion of that is going towards planning for active transportation.
Sometimes when we label things, then we create our own controversies. Active transportation is a good positive word, but for others, if it's felt like you're taking away from me. So I find, let's avoid labeling things and having them, the winners and losers out of that. For example, here, we're starting to move active transport. It's just transportation. We have vehicle transportation, we have cycling transportation, walking transportation, skateboard transportation. It's transportation. So now we don't have to take from one to give to the other. We're actually going to create good transportation throughout.